Hey, well, welcome back to another edition of our Aikman Bros podcast. I'm James Aikman.
I'm Andrew Aikman.
So today we're going to continue on with questions we get from you guys. And so again, anything else you guys can think about that you want us to answer, feel free to submit those or send those in. But so the first question is, what animals at the park cause the most trouble?
Probably every single animal that we have here at the park has its own challenges from a day-to-day kind of taking care of it, but they're definitely, I don't know if it's more trouble or if it's more dangerous. There's definitely more dangerous animals that we have compared to other ones. Take the drive-through, for example. Usually whenever we're trying to bring stuff in to do vet work on them or anything like that, I guess you could say that there are some animals that are a little more difficult to get in out of the drive-through. So like the ram species, they are a tight-knit group, and the mouflon that we have here, he is always on alert. So the problem that we always usually run into, we have probably maybe one or two tries to get him to come in with the rest of them from the drive-through. If it doesn't happen, we pretty much have to scrap our plans for that day and try again like the next day or something like that. So he is one that if he is kind of leading the herd, it is extremely difficult to get them in just because he is so flighty. He doesn't like to go where we want him to go, as opposed to some of the other ones that as long as you kind of slowly get behind them, you can kind of take them wherever you want them to go. So that would be one that kind of stands out of my head that is on the troubling side, but then kind of going more so to the danger side of things. When we get animals in to do vet work, they're usually in a more confined area, alleyways, that sort of thing. So obviously any large animal, if you're in an alleyway with a large animal, anything can be dangerous. So always have to be kind of paying attention to that. But probably the bison would be one of the more um, dangerous ones when you're actually trying to move them from one area to another. Bison are extremely powerful, extremely large, like our male Benny, probably right in that 2,000 pound range now in terms of his body size. Bison, a lot of people don't realize this, they have an incredible vertical jump. So standing still, they can get about 5-6 feet straight off the ground. So for their body size, very agile, and they are very determined to get away from you, especially the females that we have. The two females definitely are a lot more nervous when we are working with them. So they are by far, like I said, if you want to say they're kind of troubling, that's true, but more dangerous than anything. Um, some of the other cows are also the same way, that if they are in an alleyway, a lot of them have realized over the years, maybe in the beginning when they were younger, they were a little more standoffish, skittish of us working with them. But now over the years, since we've done different procedures with them so many times, they kind of know, they know just how big they are now and how small we are. So needless to say, there has been times where we are trying to push an animal down an alleyway and it decides to turn the other way, and we have to get out of there very quickly because no amount of hooting and hollering is going to stop a 2,000 pound animal if it's wanting to go through you to get to the other end of the alleyway. So I would say probably by far the bigger animals are the most dangerous slash troubling, just animals with body size, and that also includes horses. The big horses we have out there is another one that, just from a sheer body standpoint, if they get spooked, or if Randy the camel is kind of hugging the shared fence line that's out in the drive-through with the alleyway that we have set up, the slightest thing can kind of spook them, and if you're not paying attention, it doesn't take much for 1,500 pound horse to kind of do some damage on you. So there's a lot of animals out in the drive-through that are on that more dangerous side for sure.
I've been kicked by one of the horses. So
yeah, I mean,
the damage.
he probably wasn't in the spot that he was supposed to be in, but it does happen. So that's always something we got to be mindful of. Antelope, I guess they would be another one that yesterday we had some really bad weather in terms of real cold rain. Doesn't always happen, but our blue wildebeest, we opened the walk-in door and she walked right in. First time it's ever happened. She's usually one that takes a little bit longer, needs to get a little colder out before she's motivated to kind of come in to the stalls inside the barn. And our three Elans were right at the gate wanting to come in as well. So that's the nice thing about building relationships with our animals over the years. They kind of start getting in the routine when we start getting into these more colder months, getting closer to winter time. Animals that do come in from the drive-through kind of spend those colder times in the barns. They kind of get a routine down a little better. But for whatever reason, the male scimitar, it took us pretty much all day to get him in. He was just very motivated to stay out in the weather. So every now and then the antelope are a little bit kind of like that mouflon where they want to come in, but for whatever reason they don't want to make it easy. So sometimes we do have to kind of walk out there in the walkthrough or the drive-through and kind of corral them to the best we can. And so it has gotten better over the years with the antelope. There was a time in the very beginning when the antelope we didn't have any kind of routine down just because it was the first time bringing them in from the drive-through. It was quite the process. Multiple failed attempts of trying to get them where we wanted to go, but a lot of the animals have at least gotten a little better in that regard. I don't think the mouflon, that ram out there, will ever cooperate with us. It's usually the one we have to make sure we get in first, and then we usually try to do him first and get him back out just because of how insane he can get. He can probably get about, when he's running full speed and jumping, he can probably jump over my head if he wanted to. So he's just an ornery little animal.
So speaking of little animals, on the walkthrough side is a little less danger, but we do try to do enrichment for all of our animals at the park. And our hyenas and our African porcupines are probably our two most destructive animals at the park. So it does take a little more creativity on our end to come up with enrichment items that can go in with those guys that they can't destroy. Both of them can basically annihilate anything plastic, anything rubber, and that's not stuff you want them to ingest. So it's got to be a little bit different. Whether it's like we actually give the hyenas straw from the African porcupine, so they have the scent. They'll roll around on it, rub their backs, kind of like a dog, all over it. But those guys can destroy it. I feel like the African porcupines even found a crack in the concrete and started chewing and chipping away at the concrete. So yeah, those kind of present their own type of problems. Yeah. So again, coming up, starting Saturday, November 13th, will be the first Saturday this year of our Pathway of Lights, and it'll run every Saturday night until the Saturday before Christmas. I believe December 18th is the last one. And
if you come out to our park right now, like this weekend is Halloween, but it doesn't quite look like that at our park. We're already having to start the process of putting lights up just because we have so many lights that need to go up in a short amount of time. So it definitely is quite the process. So we already have Christmas decorations up if you come out this weekend.
But on that December 18th night, Santa Claus will be here, and Mrs. Claus from 5:30 to 7:30. Probably be set up in our gift shop, but Santa will be here. He couldn't make it last year, but they are back for this year's Pathway of Lights, so I know they would love to see you out there. And so the feeding at the wildlife park, I'll kind of talk about a little bit where our food comes from, and then he might get into the process. But Purina, the pet food company, has an exotic line called Missouri, Mazuri. Missouri makes food from anything from butterflies up to elephants. Most of our animals on the walkthrough side have their own type of dry food that they get. So I'd say we probably have 20 different kinds of dry food.
Yeah.
And then on the drive-through side, with the setup, since all the animals are together, it's logistically complicated, to say the least, to do individualized feeding. So we worked with one of their vets and nutritionists in the beginning to come up with the feed that could work for all of the animals out there. An example of a tweak that we done to the formula: the copper had to be removed because if sheep get copper, it can actually kill them. So we have free choice minerals out there. The animals can still get the copper they need. But this feed, they came up, they were able to pelletize it. It's the same stuff we feed when we're open, same stuff we feed when we're closed. It does fill the animals up. So you go to some places and they feed out a filler type of food that the animals can just keep eating and eating. Makes the animals bloated. It's not good for the animals. So our food does actually fill them up. We go through about 80,000 pounds of that a year. So that's kind of where the feed comes from, aside from produce and meat.
Kind of actually, I guess, day-to-day operation. So it has definitely evolved over the years, compared to what we started out with. Just like with the drive-through, we started out with getting pallets of bagged feed, and it got to the point where we were just going through too many tons that we needed to get it by the tons and have a bulk feeder and all that stuff. So that's to a certain extent streamlined it. If we're talking specifically about the drive-through, it kind of depends on the time of year. So we kind of have a winter season and a summer season. So like summer season, especially if we're open 5 days a week and we have wagons going, we do to a certain extent have to kind of allow for the public side of things when it comes to putting too much grain out there. Just like what he just mentioned, if our animals eat too much, they are done. So we do know over the years that there is a limit to the number of wagons we can do in a single day. Not so much because of time or anything like that, but it's more so because if we do too many wagons, the last wagons, it's not really a interactive type of adventure. It's more of the guides pointing out animals laying down because they have no interest in coming up and kind of interacting with the public. So when we're in that summer months, we don't feed grain out at all during those times. It's more so hay gets supplemented out every single day. We obviously cut back the amount of hay that we do during the spring and summertime just because the grass out there is growing and they are getting interaction with the behind the scenes tours, the wagon tours that are going out. When we get starting kind of now where we're at, it's kind of a transitional stage. So right now we are feeding grain out on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they are also getting an increase in hay every single day. And that will kind of gradually continue to uptick as we get further into the winter months. So dead of winter, if we're having just real nasty cold weather out, it's not uncommon anywhere between we've done 500 to 600 pounds of hay, depending on how long a duration we're going to have cold weather just out there in the drive-through alone. And it just kind of goes back to we have a lot of animals in that 1,500 pound range. It takes quite a bit to maintain that body weight during the colder months. Same thing goes for the grain. So when we get kind of into that real kind of cold season, we still do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but we increase the amount that we put out there. So we definitely we adjust as the weather needs it, as we need to with the weather and stuff like that. So our biggest thing is that we like our animals to be in the wintertime a little on the chubby side. We like a little bit more of a fat layer on them. Not only does it help them kind of keep up their body temperature, but it also just gives them a little bit of an edge. If any of them do start having any sort of respiratory issues or anything like that, it gives them a little bit more time so we can kind of get them under control before they would turn the direction we don't want them to turn. So definitely multiple kind of variables of adjusting, tweaking that throughout the year. We actually have kind of a summer mix and a winter mix when it comes to our feed that we put out there, because we had to kind of go the custom route with our feed, just with the sheep not being able to have the copper. It allows us the opportunity to kind of tweak the design a little bit. So in the summertime, we can actually cut like the protein levels down, some of the different fat levels, we can kind of put them down a little bit just because animals kind of do that natural grazing throughout the day. So in the wintertime, when they don't have that option, we bump those levels back up. And again, it just kind of goes back to gives them a little bit more fat to work with when we are in that kind of more nasty type of weather. So,
and the higher protein helps cycle stuff through their gut and that digestion. So when it's colder out, they're not as motivated to drink water because it's going to cool them down. So that higher protein during the wintertime kind of helps keep stuff moving through their body even with the less water.
And kind of the biggest thing during the winter time is, so I had mentioned earlier about some of our antelope, they already came in. Not sure if we'll be able, if we have kind of some nice days out, we'll be able to put them back out before we bring it in for good for the winter. But all the animals that are actually in the barns and stuff like that in their own stalls, we are able to more or less mimic what we do in the walkthrough. So they are able to get more specific diets. That way we can kind of see, make sure that everyone is getting what they need, and also kind of just keep a log. If an animal doesn't eat all of its food for that day, we need to make sure that's not a common theme going for the next couple of days to see if maybe there's something not quite right with it. So he had touched base that the wintertime, there are a few animals that we know more so than others don't like to drink. So, like one of our water buffalo, Snowball, it's a female water buffalo that's out there. Um, Pretty much consistent. Every now and then, if we get kind of a mild winter, we don't have to bring her in. But if it's a kind of harsh winter where the pond is completely frozen over and it's like that for weeks, we do have to bring her in because for whatever reason, she does not like to drink as much as like the other ones. So that actually firms her up a little bit when she uses the bathroom. And we have to add actual an adjective into her food to kind of help her work through that until kind of makes her want to drink a little more in terms of the beet pulp that we put in with her grain. And so, like I said, the drive-through, the nice thing about the drive-through, it is pretty much one size fits all out there, but there are exceptions to that. And especially during the winter time, we kind of take advantage of the fact that a lot of the animals that are in the barns and stuff, they are separated, so we are able to kind of go a more specific type of route for that species. With the walkthrough side, like he said, pretty much all those animals are on a specific diet for that species. And that diet, because we're dealing with smaller animals, it's down to the grams in terms of how much produce they get, how much fruit they get, if it's a kibble type of food or whatever it might be for that specific animal. But when we were building one of our new buildings that we built a couple of years ago, that was one of the main driving forces in building that building, was to have a designated commissary area so we could really map out exactly how we wanted that kind of kitchen set up to best suit our needs. Before that, we were doing it out of a 10 by 10 room that was not set up as a kitchen. So from an efficiency standpoint, it was absolutely just terrible. So we were able to, when we had the ability to build that building and kind of designate as big an area that we wanted to for that kitchen size, that was basically a game changer. We were able to not only have the space to prep out every diet that we need, but we were also able to have the space to prep out multiple days in advance. So it opened up a lot of opportunities from a storing capacity in terms of buying in bulk, so saving a little bit of money in that regard. But then also wintertime, there has been times where we have snowstorms and our employees can't get here just because the roads are not passable. So that is the benefit of having me and him live on site, and the fact that now we don't necessarily, those diets are already prepped. So that kind of takes a little bit off our plate for that day, but we can still go ahead and make sure everyone gets fed and everything like that. So everything, especially with the walkthrough, like I said, on a day to day or even week to week, the diets are tweaked ever so slightly. So a lot of the walkthrough animals, they get weights ever so often, and that's kind of how we're able to keep a log on if we need to cut something back or increase something. So it's kind of a science now in terms of really kind of maintaining what we have, and we're always looking to find different ways to kind of make it more efficient as the years go on as well.
Kind of continuing on with the animal of the week spotlight this week, we're talking about our ostrich. So the ostrich actually came from a place down by St. Louis. They raised a few ostrich, was actually for restaurants. And when COVID hit, a lot of those restaurants got shut down. So the guy was, I think, just looking to take them to auction potentially. And so we said we'd be willing to take a pair of them. And so they came in last fall. Sunny and Cher are their names. Sunny's about 8 feet tall. Cher's about 7 feet tall, and they are one of the first animals you see when you walk out into the or when you come up to the park.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know about Sunny, but Cher might get a little bigger. I mean, in terms of height wise, they were young when we got them, so they are still not fully matured yet. But kind of in my mind, one of the biggest misconceptions. A lot of people just think, well, that's a bird, so how dangerous can it be? Ostriches are Ostriches are more dangerous than the emu that we have out in the drive-through just because of their size. What ostriches like to do, and a lot of majority of all large ratite type of species like to do, is they have very powerful feet, so they have a very powerful kick. Um, it kind of depends on the time of year with Sunny, the male. He is somewhat aggressive, kind of putting food in there. We definitely, this last year, kind of springtime, he's gotten a little better now, but it seemed like it was kind of spring all the way through summer. Um, if we didn't have to go into their enclosure, then we would not go into their enclosure just because he was so aggressive. He would actually kick through the fence lines and stuff like that. So definitely another one that we really have to watch out for when we are changing water with them, or putting in new food or something like that. He is a little aggressive, so a lot of people don't think just how dangerous a big bird like that can be. But just like with a lot of animals, been on given the right opportunity, they can do quite a bit of damage.
And our emus at the park, if you look at their feet, they have 3 toes. Looks kind of like a mini T-Rex foot. The ostrich, a lot of people think theirs would be the same. The ostrich have 2 toes. Technically, it's a toe and a half. So they have a monster toe with a big claw, and then a little side support toe on the outside for balance that doesn't even have a nail on it. But they're, like you mentioned, their kick is very powerful. Their legs are powerful. That's what helps them run so fast. So they are the fastest animal at the park, probably about 45 miles an hour. But that leg power combined with that massive claw has allowed them to kill lions before in the wild. So again, very powerful kick. When they come up to us, they'll peck at things. So they're very curious, and so some people think that's them being aggressive, and so we tell them that the pecking is them just being curious. If they were aggressive or threatened, they would have their wings out. They'd be hissing, which is really the only sound I hear them doing, other than the drumming sound that Sunny can do in his chest. But if they were being aggressive, they would be trying to kick at us, and not just the pecking at us.
Yeah, so like with our emus, if anyone's ever done a drive-through and an emu's come up and started to peck their car, their mirror, or anything, same with the ostrich. Anything shiny, they just are attracted to it and want to see what that is. So we have kind of a viewing platform that looks out over the ostrich, and there's some different sort of enrichment type of, it's almost like a wind chime type of thing that's kind of, they can mess around with, peck at, makes kind of sound, but more so it kind of, when the sun hits it, it kind of gives off a little sheen to it. So they, like I said, they are very curious when it comes to kind of shiny objects. Is a little detrimental when they are curious with shiny objects. So they are also, if it's a small enough object and it's something that we kind of, before we got them, we really we took magnet type of thing all through their enclosure to make sure there wasn't any small nails or anything like that. Because with any sort of bird like that is attracted to that sort of stuff, more than likely, if they can actually swallow it, they will swallow it. So it is something we have to pay attention to ever so often, making sure there's nothing in there that could do any harm to them.
And with them, their brain is the size of one of their eyeballs, so not super intelligent birds.
First year, or last winter, we were a little concerned. They have a shelter. As long as they use that shelter, they are fairly hardy animals, in terms of, it's more so making sure that they realize when they need to use that shelter. So it took a little bit of training to get them to finally start using that when they needed to, but They did very well this past winter, so we shouldn't have any issues with them moving forward. The nice thing about that is once they get accustomed to something, they're pretty good about continuing to do that same process. So
And he had mentioned a viewing platform. It's kind of right off of our gift shop. And so, kind of leading into that last question, we are going probably next year, we start offering ostrich encounters. We've done that with our behind the scenes, taking some of our behind the scenes out there. It's gone over very well. Everybody loves it. Usually people are laughing about it. People make comments about they could spend a ton of time out there just watching them. But some days they'll be in their shelter and I'll call them and they'll eventually come out. So their curiosity, I think, adds to their kind of almost seeming like they know their names and come running up. People get to see them running. Sometimes they will twirl around kind of like psycho looking ballerinas.
they have a little bit of dance that they do.
And so very entertaining for people. And so we're excited to be able to offer the encounters in the future. It's just another one of the things people can do when they come out. So with that, just appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Later.